The New York Knicks are NBA champions, which is awesome, but is this good news or bad news for the Rangers?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1568 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here. Let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. So, sort of going to be a championship edition of Locked On New York Rangers here. Since the last time we talked, we saw, obviously, the New York Knicks go crazy, go wild, enjoy it, breathe it in. They are your 2025-2026 NBA champions. It's obviously been a long time coming. And in, sadder news, the Carolina Hurricanes are your 2025-26 Stanley Cup champions. So we're going to be talking a little bit about both of those things and how it might impact the New York Rangers in one way or another. Also going to get to K'Andre Miller, now a Stanley Cup champion, his first season away from the New York Rangers. So we'll get to all that a little bit later, but we begin with the Knicks in and of themselves winning the NBA championship. We will eventually kind of tie this back to the Rangers, but I think by now, obviously, everybody is aware of the fact that the New York Knicks just ended their 53-year championship drought. Just an awesome series against the Spurs, all these comebacks, all these great things, just everything that New York sports fans want to see in their teams. And it's very easy to say that after a team just wins an NBA championship, but I think this New York Knicks team, there are things that the Rangers can learn from observing how this Knicks team performed on the court and observing how they carried themselves, how they conducted themselves with the media and whatnot, and just that connection they made with New York and just New York sports fans everywhere. I tweeted this out on Saturday. New York sports, my God, we needed this. A lot of New York teams, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed this because a lot of you are fans, not just of the Rangers, but certainly a lot of these other teams as well, have not been very good lately. And it seems like other than now the Knicks, and they just fixed this, but about every single New York sports team is either going through a somewhat lengthy drought or a very lengthy drought as it pertains to winning a championship. But obviously the Knicks got it done, and they're now NBA champions. And what stood out to me, throughout this entire playoff run, and I'm kind of a casual Knicks fan. I'm not as into basketball as I am the other three of the four major sports. And, I've talked about that in the past. Certainly I enjoyed this run, though, and that was a blast watching them, finish off that series in San Antonio. But what really stood out about this Knicks squad to me, just how easy it is to like these players, just how easy it is to kind of gravitate to them and want to see them do well and just feel like you kind of have that connection with the players on this team. This is the kind of team that New York sports fans absolutely love. And again, I realize it's very easy to say that after they just won the NBA championship. I mean, who's not going to love these guys? Who's going to be upset about anything having to do with the Knicks right now? But it's more than that. It's about the way these guys carry themselves. It's one for all and all for one. You can tell that's a really tight-knit locker room. And, there's not much ego in that locker room either. There's certain players that were asked to take maybe smaller roles than they're used to having. And, certain guys are going to be in this role and certain guys are going to be in that role. And the bottom line, nothing really mattered to any of these players other than winning a championship. If you watch the way the season went and certainly the way the postseason went, none of these players in the Knicks ever really seemed to allow themselves to get too high or too low. They just kind of stayed focused on the goal. And one of the moments that really stood out to me was, being up 3-1 and you're going into game 5 and you got a chance to win the NBA championship. And, Jalen Brunson was asked what his mindset is. And he pretty much just said to me that the series is 0-0. And I thought that was the perfect response. Just focus on the next game, the next possession, whatever it might be. But this New York Knicks team through it all was just so singularly focused on winning a championship and nothing else mattered. It didn't matter who was getting the stats. It didn't matter who was doing this and who was doing that. These guys wanted to bring a championship to New York. That meant a lot to these guys. You can very clearly see that. And so that's basically, when it comes to New York sports fans, that's what we all want to see in our teams. Once again, whether it's the Knicks, the Rangers, or any of the other ones. And I think, talking about the Rangers here, that also explains why I think so many of us Ranger fans look back on those Ranger teams from the mid-2010s so fondly, right? Those teams never won a championship. They got close a couple of times. Obviously, they made it to the Stanley Cup final in 2014. But the reason why people look back so fondly on players like Brassard or Stepan or like McDonough, somebody like Carl Hagelin, is because everybody on that squad, they were giving you everything they had. They left it on the ice every single night. And if you do that, when it comes to New York sports fans, and we're a tough bunch. I'm not saying we're not. I'm not even saying there's times where we haven't maybe been a little bit unfair to certain players, certain teams in the past. But if you do that, if you leave it all out there and you don't make excuses and you're accountable, then you've already won half the battle. You're not all the way there yet. I mean, ultimately, you do have to win to really be adored by New York sports fans, but you've won half the battle if you can at least carry yourself that way. And when you look at the things that New York sports fans do not want, I think a lack of effort is probably at or near the top of the list. And when you look at this Ranger team the last couple of years, that's been a problem. I mean, things were better, after the Olympic break here. The Rangers play a little better. And of course, the effort was a heck of a lot better down the stretch this past season. But when you look at the entirety of these last two seasons combined, lack of effort has been a serious problem for this New York Ranger team. And that's why people go on social media and they chew out these players and they chew out this team and they chew out this organization because I mean, certain games, not all of them, but certain games, the Rangers go out there and they're sleepwalking for 60 minutes. And you start wondering, like, as a fan, like, okay, why do I care so much about this? I feel like I care about this more than the players do, right? So that's been a problem. Certainly New York sports fans do not want to hear any excuses. And there's been a little bit of that, from different New York teams. I mean, the Rangers have done it a little bit. The Yankees have certainly done it. I mean, pay attention to some of their, post-game press conferences in the playoffs. There's no excuses coming from this Knicks game. And again, yes, they just won a championship, but this made it so much easier to root for them along the way because they're not excuse makers. They're going out there, and if they lose, they lose. It is what it is, and we move on to the next game, and we win that one. And obviously, the Knicks were very good at that, considering the fact that they went 16-3 in this playoff run, including, what would that be? So 15-1 the last 16 games, whatever it was. It's pretty crazy. And another thing that New York sports fans do not want is a lack of accountability. And this is an area where it felt like the Rangers were getting a little bit better at the start of the season because they had some games that weren't very good and they faced the music. JT Miller specifically, his first year as the captain, and he said, you know what, that wasn't good enough. We have to be better. And that was all well and good. It was an answer that you wanted to hear as a fan, but it started to ring hollow at a certain point because he would say something like that, or other players in this Ranger team would say something like that, and they'd be just as bad, if not worse, in the game that followed. Now, I know a lot of people are going to hear all this. And they're going to look at the roster last season and the squad that Drury helped assemble. And they're going to say, like, well, that's all well and good. But the biggest problem with this Ranger team is a lack of talent, especially last season. And there is some truth to that. You could try as hard as you want. If there's not enough talent, you're not going to be the last team standing at the end of the day. However, what I would say to that, as bad as the Rangers were this past season, the effort was just as much of a problem as the supposed lack of talent, at least for the majority of the season. When the Rangers were losing 16 out of 19 in December and January, however many it was, did people really look at that Ranger team on a game-by-game basis? And did you really come away with the conclusion that these guys were giving it everything that they had out there and laying it all on the ice? Probably not. Probably not. And that's, again, something that's really going to get under the skin and irk a lot of New York sports fans. They're just not going to put up with that kind of nonsense. But then to bring it back to the Knicks, if there's anything the Rangers can learn from the Knicks, from what happened this past season, it's that any kind of excuses, any lack of effort, any lack of team camaraderie, that's just not going to be tolerated by this fan base. And again, if you can eliminate all of that, because the Knicks didn't do any of those things. So if you can eliminate all of that, that's at least half the battle. And it leads to more success. I mean, clearly, you look at the Knicks, that's exhibit A, B, and C right there. So, yeah, again, I mean, it was awesome. Awesome run by the Knicks. I got to give a huge congratulations to the true diehard Knicks fans, the people that never miss a game and have lived and died with this team and bleed orange and blue. I hope you obviously enjoyed it. I hope you're still enjoying it. I mean, remember, the Knicks are the NBA champions until somebody wins it next season. Hopefully that's the Knicks doing it again. Again, I've always been kind of a casual Knicks fan, and I certainly did enjoy watching them throughout this run. I am a little bit jealous, though, because as much as I'm liking this, it would be like 100 times bigger for me if the Rangers were to do what the New York Knicks just did. But it is what it is. Bottom line, if you're a Knicks fan, enjoy this. And especially if you're kind of like a younger fan, understand or try to understand that championships don't happen very often. And again, the Knicks are a prime example of that. They just broke a 53-year drought. The bottom line, the cold hard truth, you don't get to see your team win a whole lot of championships in your lifetime. And there are some fans of certain teams, they live their whole life and they never get to see their team win a championship. And as depressing as that is, hey, at least we all just got one for the New York Knicks, right? Because again, if you're less than 53 years old, then you were not alive the last time the Knicks won a championship. So it's obviously a cool moment. Breathe it in, have fun with it, and just enjoy it. And for the Raider fans, I mean, hang in there. This is why we do what we do. This is why we're Raider fans, because as bad as things have been the past 2 seasons, there's always hope. And you just hope that sooner or later, everything comes back together. The Rangers put the pieces back together. They get back to having a team that is at least a championship contender and ultimately does win a Stanley Cup championship. I think we're at least a few years away from that being a reality based on where things stand right now, but you never know for sure. And that's what keeps us coming back. And again, congrats to the Knicks, and hopefully there's brighter days ahead for the New York Rangers. I do want to shift our attention in just a minute, though, to a former New York Ranger. That would be K'Andre Miller winning a Stanley Cup. Going to have some thoughts on him going to the Canes and immediately becoming a Stanley Cup champion. We will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success is not just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it's true in business. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. And that's what you love about the tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started right now. All right, let's go and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the Everydayers. As always, get your daily Ranger fix completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonnyrangers.supercast.com to claim your free trial. All right, so let's go and keep everything going here. One more mention here, though. Tomorrow's episode is actually already recorded. If you can possibly believe this, the Locked On Podcast Network is about to turn 10 years old. That happens tomorrow. So all of us hosts were asked to do something special to celebrate the moment. And what I came up with, it's NHL draft season. So we're going through the top 10 best draft picks by the New York Rangers since Locked On New York Rangers came into existence in 2019. So from 2019 onward. And definitely looking forward to getting that episode out to you guys tomorrow. And obviously a very cool thing that Locked On is now 10 years old. But we keep everything going here with K'Andre Miller winning the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, a side effect of this is that also means that the Carolina Hurricanes just won the Stanley Cup. And as lame as that is, the one silver lining for me, the one silver lining that I knew would be there if the Canes were to win it all, is that K'Andre Miller does win a Stanley Cup. So a big time congratulations to him. And I really do mean that. You know, this is somebody that obviously came under fire from a lot of Ranger fans, myself included, during his last 2 seasons, and especially what turned out to be his final season there. I just feel like his game very much regressed those last couple of years with the New York Rangers. You know, if you guys remember, those of you that have been here for a really long time, when he first came into the NHL, I thought, man, this kid is a player. Like, he's going to be a staple of New York Ranger hockey for a very, very long time going forward. And the organization probably felt the same way. I mean, he is a former first-round draft pick, and he started very well in his NHL career with the Rangers. And I just don't really know what happened. I mean, is it the fact that everything is collapsing around him that, he starts to collapse as well? Just too many mental mistakes and big spots in the games last season. And, the writing was kind of on the wall that the Rangers didn't really want to pay K'Andre Miller. They'd rather ship him away and, get whatever they can for him in a trade. And that's what they did in that trade with the Carolina Hurricanes. But bottom line, I mean, Miller did a heck of a job for this team throughout the entire playoff run that the Canes had, really throughout the entire season. You look at what he did in the playoffs, no goals, 9 assists. He was a plus 12. More than anything, though, just a rock defensively. I mean, it felt like, they weren't going to give up a goal if he was on the ice. The worst part about all of this to me, though, is that feeling, and some of you probably feel it too, that none of this is surprising. K'Andre Miller, complete mess for the Rangers his final season, and he was not the only one. The entire team was a mess, but he had a bad season his last year with the Rangers. And again, caught a lot of heat from myself, I'm sure from a lot of you as well. But we all kind of see what happened here, right? The bottom line, it gets to the offseason, last offseason, Miller, a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. And it really feels to me like what happened here is the Carolina Hurricanes saw a prime buy low opportunity when it came to K'Andre Miller. They didn't really care about the fact that he was coming off a bad season. They didn't really care about the fact that he seemed to be regressing in recent years. The bottom line is the Canes saw a guy that had success in the past, a guy that is clearly a talented player, and a guy that they felt they could basically fix. He would fit our system really well. He could be the missing piece, or at least one of the missing pieces, to winning a Stanley Cup. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And all of this kind of begs the question, when you see how well Miller did for the Canes this season, would he have turned it around with the New York Rangers? I don't really think he would have, or at least not to the degree that he did with the Canes. And of course, with Miller, it helps the fact that he's on a great team. He joins the Canes. They've been a threat for, pretty much all of the Rod Brind'Amour era over there. This is the first time they finally have, pushed it across the finish line. But the reason that they're a great team, the Hurricanes I'm talking about, is that they get the most out of all their players. And you look at a situation like the one we have now, the Canes were able to get the absolute best out of K'Andre Miller. The New York Rangers were not, or at least the last few seasons, they were not. And that's a problem for the Rangers. It does feel like whichever players are on this Ranger roster, they tend to do better in other places. We'll do a closer look at that, in a future episode of Locked On Rangers. Once we get a little bit deeper into the offseason here, we'll look at players that, did better when they left the Rangers, or guys that maybe did worse when they left the Rangers. But obviously, this is an example right here of somebody whose career seemed to be on the downturn a little bit. Not that like K'Andre Miller was going to fall out of the NHL or anything like that, but he was scuffling a little bit. He goes to the Canes, and he's as good as he's ever been. And obviously, again, playing a top 4 role on a big-time team and winning a Stanley Cup his first season there. Now, the one good aspect of all of this when it comes to K'Andre Miller, I said this at the time, and I'll say it again here now. When the Rangers traded K'Andre Miller, I thought they got a heck of a haul in exchange for him. The full package, for anybody that needs a refresher, the Rangers got themselves a first-round pick in the draft, a second-round pick in the draft, and Scott Morrow. And on paper, again, this to me still feels like a very, very good return for a K'Andre Miller who was rapidly regressing with the New York Rangers. But the problem with all this, and some of you might be a step ahead of me right now, is you then remember that it's the Rangers that need to make something good happen out of this return. When you look at Scott Morrow, scuffled a little bit in his first season as a member of the New York Rangers. There were some opportunities there. Adam Fox, was injured. They gave Morrow a little bit of a look on the top power play unit, and it didn't really click. And overall, Miller just made too many mistakes. He just didn't really look like he was ready for the NHL, and that's why he ends up with the Hartford Wolfpack for the conclusion of last season. And now there's even more competition as it pertains to the New York Ranger defenseman. So we'll see if he, makes the team, if he's in the opening night lineup. But year one with Scott Morrow, it certainly could have gone a little better than it did. But that also brings us to the 2 draft picks that the Rangers acquired in exchange for K'Andre Miller. And those are going to happen this year. The Rangers are at number 26. That was the pick that was going to belong to the Canes until, obviously, the trade of K'Andre Miller. So they've got number 26, and they've also got number 64. In a roundabout way, though, it's weird how the NHL is doing this because they still have this listed as the number 64 pick, even though Vegas had to forfeit the number 63 overall pick. The Knights, they pulled that nonsense where they closed out a series and then just didn't show up for the post-game media. So that cost them a second round pick. So they're still calling it number 64, but really it's number 63. Either way, though, these are two high picks. You've got the mid to late first round pick, and you've got the final pick of the second round. If you're the New York Rangers, you have to do something positive with this. Ideally, between Morrow and these two picks here, the Rangers could make this a nice, trade, even though K'Andre Miller just helped his team win a Stanley Cup. If you can get something good out of all three of those assets, then obviously you're going to feel a lot better about trading K'Andre Miller. But again, it's the Rangers, so it's hit or miss at best, and you just hope that they make good use of these draft picks and they eventually are also able to get something out of Scott Morrow. Time's going to tell there, but yeah, this trade of K'Andre Miller, we're not there yet because as far as it being like a terrible trade for the Rangers, because we're still going to see how these draft picks turn out and we're still going to see how Scott Morrow is going to turn out. But if K'Andre Miller goes on to be this all-world defenseman and wins another Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes and the Rangers don't do anything with these draft picks or they draft guys that turn out to be complete busts, then yeah, this is going to be up there pretty high as far as all-time, bad New York Ranger trades. I'm not there yet. I think certainly the jury is still out. But that possibility is at least on the table. So now the ball is in the Rangers' court. It's up to them to make the best out of these assets that they acquired for, again, Stanley Cup champion K'Andre Miller. So in just a minute, we're going to keep everything rolling. We've obviously talked a little bit about the Knicks. We've talked a little bit about the Carolina Hurricanes, both winning championships. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for the Rangers as it pertains to, them moving forward, the entire organization, top to bottom? We're going to discuss that in just a second. All right, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why the fruity 5 Hour Energy shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy shots treat your taste buds to an explosion of fruity flavor with a tasty caffeine kick. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. It is a zero sugar treat that is sweet tooth approved. It's incredibly convenient. It's just a small portable shot you can grab whenever you need a little pick-me-up. It's a great go-to when you want something sweet without going completely overboard. So get candy-flavored chaos with Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon. Okay, so the Knicks are NBA champions. The Carolina Hurricanes are Stanley Cup champions. Is this good or bad for the Rangers moving forward? And we'll start with the Knicks because we like them and we don't like the Canes. So we'll begin with the New York Knicks, once again ending their 53-year championship drought. So I don't really see how them winning a championship can be a bad thing for the Rangers. I've seen a couple of fan theories on social media and whatnot. A lot of people saying things like, oh man, James Dolan, he didn't care about the Rangers to begin with. And now the fact that the Knicks won a championship, he's going to care about them even less than ever. And that's going to result in Chris Drury having an endless leash that he obviously does not deserve. Honestly, though, I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference moving forward as far as James Dolan and his interference or lack of interference with the New York Rangers. And for anybody that, might be new to Ranger fandom, Knicks fandom, the perception among New York sports fans for quite some time has been that Dolan seems to care more about the Knicks than the Rangers. And I think there might be some truth to that. At the same time, though, the positive here is that seemingly the less that James Dolan meddles in his team's fortunes, the better off they are for it. My understanding, and Knicks fans, the people that really follow this team and are really on top of this team on a daily basis, you can tell me probably, the best. But my understanding is that he's been a little bit more hands-off when it comes to the Knicks in recent seasons. I know he was on New York sports media not too long ago. He did that radio interview when the Knicks were up 2-0, and he said a couple of things. Everybody's eyebrows kind of went up, and is this going to be a distraction? Fortunately, the Knicks obviously pushed through, and they got the job done. But he did that interview, and then there was also an interview a couple of months back, I want to say like around January, where he was talking about both the Knicks and the Rangers. And one thing he said about the Rangers is that he's trying to be patient when it comes to the Rangers. And that was weird for myself, and I think for a lot of you as well, because, okay, so he's not patient when the Rangers are in a championship window, but now that they're like falling apart and are third to last in the NHL and don't seem to have a real clear direction, don't seem to have a real clear game plan moving forward, now is when James Dolan is going to decide that he wants to be patient with the Rangers. So that's a little bit strange, and it was a little bit disheartening, I think, for Ranger fans, because that would at least seem to imply that, once again, Chris Drury, as the general manager, probably has a little bit more rope than he might deserve. I guess the one good thing about that is that Drury, at least on paper, won't make any rash, knee-jerk kind of moves to save his own job if he's got a little bit more leash. But the bottom line, with the Rangers struggling like this and basically being embarrassing, when you look at all of the last 2 seasons combined, the cumulative, bunch of games that were played there, this team has mostly been terrible, and we know that this can't go on forever. No general manager in professional sports gets to keep his or her job, forever. So that's the bottom line. Drury, he's on the clock. There has to be some improvements made at one time or another. So I don't think the Knicks winning can be a bad thing for the Rangers. Can it be a good thing for the Rangers? To begin with, it's just great for the city. It's great for all of us. It's great for, again, the true diehard Knicks fans that never miss a game, that live and die with what this team does. Again, really breathe this in, really enjoy this, and don't let go of this feeling for as long as you possibly can. As far as something more tangible, though, why this could be a good thing for the Rangers, the Knicks winning the championship, it's at least possible that certain NHL players who may have, had some good feelings about going to New York in the past, maybe this pushes them over the top, because the Rangers are kind of a mess right now. We know that. Terrible season. But you look at what the Knicks just did, and you look at how much this means to the city. Just go on social media. See all the videos that are out there of people partying around the clock for the New York Knicks winning an NBA championship. Just look at how passionate New York sports fans are. Look at how much this means to people. And look at the fact that these players that just won this championship on this New York Knicks team are going to be absolutely immortalized from now until the end of time. There has to be, not for all NHL players, but at least for some of them, a certain allure that comes along with that. Just with that idea that, man, if I was to go to New York and bring a championship to the Rangers, that's how we're going to be treated. That's going to be how it goes for any member of any New York sports team that ultimately delivers a championship to this city. And that's what's so cool, I think, about some of these New York Knicks players right now. A lot of them probably don't even realize it. And this is true whether it's Jalen Brunson or the last guy off the bench. Those guys are now immortal. And if you don't believe me, think back to the 1994 New York Rangers, right? Whether you're Mark Messier or, again, somebody like Doug Lidster who played, a role, but a smaller role, every single member of that 1994 New York Rangers Stanley Cup championship team is forever immortalized in New York City and forever immortalized by New York sports fans everywhere. I mean, that's amazing. We haven't even gotten to the Knicks championship parade yet. Maybe that's when all this will sink in a little bit more. But I mean, that's the coolest thing ever, And if you deliver a championship to New York City, you're a made person forever. Nobody ever forgets about that. No New York sports fan will ever forget you. And that's a really cool thing. You'll never have to order a drink for sure. The rest of your days in New York City, somebody's always got you covered there. And, again, just the fact that it was such a long time, and that kind of adds to it. But again, if you're a player around the NHL, and again, you were already kind of attracted to the idea of coming to New York, I think seeing the Knicks win a championship, that could add to that, at least a little bit. As far as the Canes winning it all, is this a good thing or a bad thing for the New York Rangers? Now, on paper, of course, this is a bad thing because I assume most people watching this are Ranger fans. And to say the least, we're not really all that fond of the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that's fair to say. We're probably going to have to hear it from Canes fans for a little while moving forward here. So again, mostly a bad thing, the Canes winning it, if we're being completely honest here. However, the one silver lining that I've always been able to find when it comes to a division rival winning a championship, whether it's hockey or anything else, is that you now have them in your crosshairs. They're your rival, and you also know that's the team that we need to take down if we're going to get to where we need to go. And the team that was the hunter, that being the Carolina Hurricanes, they're now the hunted. So if you're a player on the Rangers, you want to be taken seriously, you want to be big-time contenders moving forward, that is the team that is in your way. So that's the mission statement. I mean, obviously, the mission statement is to win some games this upcoming season. That would be nice, and get back to the playoffs and establish yourself as a contender. But you've got your prime target right in front of you. And of course, the Rangers and Canes both being in the Metro, they're going to play each other 4 times this upcoming season. And for anybody that might be wondering, when you look at what happened between the Rangers and Canes this past season, the Rangers lost 3 out of 4 games against the Canes this past season, which really isn't that surprising. If it is surprising, it's probably just the simple fact that the Canes didn't actually sweep the Rangers all 4 games this past year. But to run through the schedule this past season, real quick here, the Rangers lost 3-0 to the Canes in the Garden on November 4th. They won 4-2 on the road, November 26th. Then December 29th, the Rangers lose 3-2 to the Canes in overtime. And then they lose 2-0 to the Canes in the Garden on February 5th. But again, you've got your target here, right? And if the Rangers can beat the Canes in their first matchup this upcoming season, I'm not going to say that solves all the Rangers' problems or that makes them Stanley Cup contenders or anything like that, because that's just not true. But that'll be a really satisfying win, I think, for Ranger fans. That's going to be one of the more feel-good Ranger wins that we've had in a long time, because they're the champs now, right? So that's the team you got to get past. That's the team you got to take out. And the schedule's not out yet. We don't know when the Rangers and Canes are going to play each other, but that's one that I think a lot of us will probably be circling on the calendar. We probably would have done that anyway, but the fact that the Canes are now the champions, the Rangers can hopefully score a big early season win against the defending Stanley Cup champions. That would be big for this team. And I think, again, a lot of us would really, really enjoy that moment. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to LockedOnNYRangers@gmail.com. Once again, that's LockedOnNYRangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at JChick17. Once again, at JCHIK17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.